Episode of the Modern Biopharma Podcast. I'm excited today to have Kevin Chronley. He's a vice president at AZ Construction up here in New England. And Kevin and I have known each other for a few years now here in the Boston ISPE space, and I'm excited to have him on today. How are you doing today, Kevin?
I'm doing very well. That's quite the introduction. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Yeah, so Kevin, I talk about Kevin, and I sometimes joke that he's my Uncle Kevin. I don't know where that came from, but I call him that, and he's been, kind of like a mini mentor for me here in this space, and I've really gotten to like him and getting to know him through a lot of the ISPE activities that we're both involved in New England, and he continues to be involved in a lot of those things. And so I wanted to have him as a guest on the show. So welcome today. Kevin, we're going to get right to it. And if you could, beyond, you're a VP at AZ, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm trying to boil it all down to a lifetime into a short sentence. I think what I could tell you about myself is I try to enthusiastically embrace new challenges. I don't want to confuse that with necessarily I excel at those challenges. But the question you pose sort of pries at me to share something about myself. I have a goofy nickname. It's a moniker I don't think Kevin associate with a seasoned professional. So I don't usually talk about it in my career world, but my nickname captures a little bit about myself. Since childhood, I've been called Rookie. Affectionately and shortened down to Rook, so I don't have to be reminded about the fact that I really don't excel at too many things. It does capture some of the positives that I try to earnestly and diligently try to do many things, and I do enjoy doing them. I think that's a key, is in trying to find things you enjoy so you can do them as well as possible. And the result is I don't do a lot of things in terms of mastery, but I've had a lot of fun trying to do a variety of stuff, hence my nickname Rookie.
All right, awesome. Well, I know you do one thing personally in your spare time. You play hockey, right?
Yes, I do.
And oh yeah, tell me something about hockey. How is hockey part of your life?
Well, it's one of those things I started unusual for the sport. I started about a couple weeks before my 18th birthday. So the typical hockey player plays from a very young age, and they get balance, which is key. Not to say I'm unbalanced, but it took me a long time. I coached, I reffed, I practiced inside, outside to this day. Subsequently coached for 31 years, primarily high school. And I think the world of hockey has a lot of similarities with my career and my life, because it constantly has adversaries that are trying to stop you. You get knocked down, and you have choices. And I think one of the best choices is to get up and try again.
Wow. Well, I didn't know you started at 18. That's a tough sport to start as an adult, for sure.
Yeah, there's sort of those like 18-year-olds, and I'm much older, so that's worse.
The sea legs, right? I know with skiing, like when you learn skiing at a really young age, it's like their balance and their comfort level on skis is so much better than those of us that learned as an adult. So skating would be very similar, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, I know you've been at AZ now for a number of years, and you were at other places before then. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement and how you got into the pharmaceutical industry?
Well, I was educated as a chemical engineer, so that threw me into the process world. I started my career with a class act company called Ciba-Geigy, and I always look back, and it's sort of like looking back at when you were raised. You just learn a whole bunch of stuff that is critical, and you're probably at that, if you're awake in life and you absorb things, which is harder to do when you get older, because my observation is that as you get older, you don't like to learn. So you almost have to force yourself. And I constantly remind myself of how much fun my youth was, how much fun my first jobs were. And subsequently, I went on a whole playground of various career moves. managed multinational company, got to travel throughout the world, met a diverse group of people, and learned the simple things. You find the good in people, and you need good people to accomplish objectives. And I eventually came to the biopharm world in the Northeast by wanting to move back to where I was raised and had a lot of family. Came here to buy a company that was in modular, innovative approaches to biopharm. And through some twists of fate, I ended up at Hart. So at Hart for a couple of years. And then I went to and I enjoyed that, and went to a bigger playground with more toys to play at A.
All right, awesome. Yeah, so I've actually had a few paths crossed with AZ over the years, so I've always seen good things with AZ, and it's been good to work with them. So something I'm interested in just learning from people that have been in the industry for a little while. So you've definitely seen changes. You know, we all have seen changes in the industry. What's something that sticks out to you as one of the bigger changes here in the biopharm world in the last, say, 10, 15 years?
Well, this whole move towards continuous manufacturing and there's so many steps to it. I feel like, when I was first at school, by playing basketball, I met some kids in the neighborhood and met a professor who, in looking back, they would call it bioengineering. It was biologic science technologies. And I remember asking Professor Hartman all the time to explain what that was. And because the biopharm world we know today did not exist in the 70s, it's just a reference point that fascinates me, that reminds me how young this industry is and how quickly it has evolved. And from the big 20,000 liter reactors to the single-use disposables and the things we're continually evolving towards, and in terms of modular, which modular was a business I actually came to ISPE. I met someone to buy a business in Tampa, Florida, and it was an ISPE conference. I met the person at. We shook hands on a deal, went into an ISP meeting to join a lunch. There were 8 people at the table. I've done business with every single person at that I met at that February 2004 luncheon before, and then I went outside the lunch and signed up to be part of ISPE.
Wow, that was a good networking event for you.
It absolutely was. You need good people. You need to find resources.
Wow, awesome. So can you talk about a little bit about you as you're part of AZ Construction? So what part do you play in the world of biopharma as a company? If you want to focus maybe on one specific area, that's fine. But like, what do you guys do in the pharma space to sort of make it all happen?
Well, the 50-year history before me at AZ was to develop long-term relationships, and I liked that. It allowed me to switch from the manufacturing side of the world to the service provider side, and they identified themselves as an integrated service provider, which allowed you to find a number of ways to support a client solving their problems. If problems is too vulgar a word, you could use the word strategic objective. They both mean about the same as far as I'm concerned. And then you get involved with these clients and you bring pre-con and estimating and planning and scheduling and risk assessment. And eventually you get into designs and construction and commissioning and ongoing optimization. And that image of being able to bring things from idea into reality is such a turn on that I find working for this particular company in construction. Even, we were talking on a phone call recently about the world of COVID-19 that we're in now. All those changes that occur, that there's obviously risks involved and the serious implications, but the challenges, and we have meetings every day as a company discussing those. Some of them in the early days were how to modify the healthcares and the hospital clients we had. And others are like, I'm more into the biopharm world because of my background. We wrestle in our company with how to put individuals into specific marketplaces, but it's more about relationships. And most of my relationships are in biopharm, so therefore I'm associated with life sciences and ISPE. And that's how I find myself here today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, obviously I see you at everything ISPE related, and your role as past president. What were you before you were in the Boston chapter? You were part of a different chapter. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Just because I know there's some history there.
Well, when I first joined, I was the sponge again, trying to learn. I met Hank Mose, for instance, on my first February 2008 for lunch. He wasn't at my table. I just met him at the event. I met people I still deal with today, like Andre Walker. And as I mentioned, the 8 people who are at my table are still network friends, and I've done business with them. I find myself with ISP. I originally started at Boston, and I was going to things, and in the pinnacle of it was being educated. And as a side effect, I learned about networking and found that there were people I wanted to engage with. And I found my way getting involved with the New England chapter because they reached out and asked me to be part of servicing parts of New England outside of Boston. And I climbed up, and I was president of the New England chapter, and the sustainability of that chapter in light of Boston being the epicenter of the biotech world, and the human capital that's coming out of these universities, and of course that spurs other people to come from throughout the world. It made logical sense to serve the whole region, the Boston area and the New England region, by combining the two operations. And I got back involved with Boston, and I'm currently media past president.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Okay. So you're getting to make some of these concepts reality, right? That's one of the things you said you get really excited about. And obviously on the construction side, integrator side, that's, you're on the front end of a lot of these projects. I mean, that's a lot of your primary role as a company. Can you think of like some improvements that you're maybe seeing happen right now? You mentioned continuous manufacturing, which is sort of a how do we make the medicines, but any other improvements in how we do things that you've seen in projects where you think that it's, something we should be doing more of as we move into the future, or you think is a really good idea that is maybe slow to adopt right now? Yeah, you get the idea.
Well, modularity is the word that comes to mind. Finding uniform ways, best practices. Being a constructor, the first place to think of is modular buildings, modular process skids. But even the modular approach to bringing an idea all the way to the marketplace. Obviously, there's lots of uniqueness to all these different therapies, but there's also commonality. So finding an approach that doesn't have to reinvent the wheel and tackle every issue. So whether it's 80-20 or not, a whole bunch of what we do is modular in approach, each and every step. In fact, working with one of the big pharma companies right now on that very idea, and where we would work on it without identifying in a pilot sense, in an MSAT sense, and then relocate that. In this case, the first place it'll be relocated is Ireland. So those kinds of things are exciting because eventually, one of the things I really enjoy about being in healthcare is the immediacy of being able to make a better quality of life for people. And
Yeah.
It's tangible connections to what we do in this industry. If you stop and look around, it's not far from what we do, any of us, to the patient. Obviously, it's a long string of steps, but we're all part of a chain that gets to a better healthcare.
So what's something, can you give me I mean, you don't have to tell me a company, but a specific example of the modularity as you've seen it applied where you've said, wow, this is obviously an improvement over what it was before?
Yeah, well, being a chemical engineer, I like continuous operations because it creates steady state. It creates a statistical basis, and even the science of informatics that can computer generate models. So we're speeding up the whole experiment by design process of years ago. These are all very exciting opportunities, which I think you see things like selling gene therapy, CAR T, these boutique medicines that are just around the corner, if not a reality today, are smaller, more condensed, more mobile. It's quicker from idea to someone's vein.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my next question was, tell me something you're kind of excited about in the industry. Is that, probably down that line?
Well, the most topical subject of the day is COVID-19, and being part of the fact that this is a monster out there that has no cure right now, and the only cure that our industry typically has found for such things is vaccines, and in finding alternative paths through RNA technologies, informatics technologies, and eventually, I think the stress and strains that we're seeing now, these challenges and burdens that we face as humanity, I think is going to teach us how to get products to people faster. And vaccines are one of the most burdensome, most arduous paths because it's a diverse global population that has huge numbers are going to be exposed to these vaccines, and people have expectations if you have a vaccine that you're going to be protected. And to reach that objective, we could learn all new things because of this. And many of the companies that we're working with are in the Boston area because of this crucible of innovation here in the Boston area. I think are participating now, and indirectly or directly. And the answer is coming.
Yeah, in just the last couple of weeks, I've called different customers and been speaking with other friends, and it's, in here in the Boston area, it seems like everybody's working on an answer all at the same time. So it's pretty exciting time to be around it for sure. Well, that's good. I think that, especially the stuff that's coming out of Cambridge. I mean, just walk down the street and every other company has got a new idea with some of the new technologies that are out, and it's pretty exciting to see what's going to happen in the next 10 years. So, speaking of 10 years, so I want to ask you, if you were to look back over your career, what's something you think you'd want to tell yourself today, if you were 10 years younger?
Well, there's
and it can't be a stock tip. That's key. Stock tips.
Yeah, I know. That's people are calling. That's fascinating. Well, the golden rule comes to mind. Treat people like you want to be treated. And the way I would convert that to what I would tell somebody that was 10 years my younger is that I believe in teamwork and I believe in collaboration. And if you don't work with people and you don't find the good in those people and tap into it, you won't achieve everything you want. And that circles back to the golden rule: treat people the way you expect to be treated.
That's great. It's one of those, there's a lot of these things that I think we hear and we sort of go, yeah. But like, as you just get a little bit older, you start to go, no, for real. That's what I wish I'd actually known rather than just somebody told me. Right. It's convincing people of that. That's the trick. So, all right, Kev, this has been great. I only have one last question for you, and we'll do that. But before we leave, you have any parting thoughts you'd like to share? Remember, we're talking to people like yourself, a lot of people here in the world of actually making the medicines that we all use. So, the engineers and the quality guys and the guys that are out there taking care of the equipment. So that's who we're talking to. So, you have any parting thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, my parting thought is linked to your introduction. And I almost at the time wanted to switch it because I'm so excited about having met you years ago and what a great person you are. So I would say my parting thought is enjoy life as much as you can. Enjoy giving of yourself, like I always see Jesse doing. Think about all he's done for our chapter. Think about the product show. Think of what he does for ISPE all the time. And just like Jesse, I hope you all stay terrific.
All right, thanks. So that was really nice. I didn't tell him to do that, by the way. That was nice.
I didn't think about it. You gave me that nice.
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much for being on today. This was great. I'm excited to see how this podcast, spreads over time. This is still new. We're only got a few in, and we're excited to see what people think and, where it goes and who else we can interview. So thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks. Have a great day.